Well, I think I have settled on the degenerate win con that I'm going to be going for in the Jarl, right? Of course, we're still sticking with Thrive. I think this also makes a decent case as to why Thrive is probably going to be near the top of LSS's to ban list, right? So, what else we're utilizing? Well, our setup is 3 NG bots, right? And basically Crumble to Eternity. So Crumble to Eternity is also a very interesting card, right? Because usually Guardian Auras or Earth cards, they usually are a bit more targeted. So this is your next attack, gets Dominate when it procs on your following turn, which I assume the intended usage is probably to give your weapon Dominate, right? Or at least leave it open for your weapon to be Dominate, but I think we can come up with a bit more of an interesting use. Aside from that, we do have some other auras that we might as well put into play, since we do have the cards to do so, right? So we'll do Emerging Avalanche, which will pitch the Titanium Bubble, and we'll also get to fuse it since we do have Crumble to Eternity, right? Since it's Ice Earth, that does open up a decent amount of choice, right? So Frostbite there, plus when we play the Crumble to Eternity at normal Jarl things, we'd probably strip through our opponent's armor by the time that we actually go for this OTK. So we get the Frostbite from that as well, right? So that's kind of nice. So Strong Yield, and then lastly, just Crumble to Eternity, and we're all right to go. So, what is the big payoff? Well, yeah. When I cook, right? So the Jarl and Firebreather, thanks to Thrive. Boy oh boy, is that quite the feat, right? And now, of course, it has Dominate, thanks to Crumble to Eternity. Yeah. So we can crack all our energy reserves, right? So our 6 from potions and our tunic. Then we can play our Thrives, and then it's just Firebreather and amp it as much as possible, right? So it starts at 15. And every time we click the button, it's getting 4 extra attacks. So that's fairly decent. We're already 35 plus an extra 3. That brings us to a 47 with Dominate. And mind you, this is probably a more conservative setup. We can definitely take it a lot further if we add some other cards into the mix. But still, a 47 with Dominate, right? As Jarl with Frostbite, with stripping away our opponent's armor. I feel like that will probably do the trick, but we'll juice it up a little bit. We'll see what the extreme side of it is, and then probably try to find the middle ground. Okay, so we've added a few extra cards into the mix, right, to try and get Firebreather to its maximum damage potential. So for setup, we have 3 Amulets of Earth, 3 Potions of Strength, the Time Snap Potion, and of course the Energy Potion still. And then we've also tweaked the equipment for Plume of Evergrowth to Recycle Thrive, Crackerjacks, and the Harn Cross Trap, since it ends up being 1 extra resource by discounting Firebreather over Spring Tunic. And then also we're starting with a Seeds of Strength. Now this does require us to have the action point, right, because I do think Crumble to Eternity is the big clincher, right? We want Firebreather to have Dominate. Without Dominate, it definitely loses some of its luster. So yeah, Seeds of Strength generating 3 might with Thrive is more damage overall than Strong Yield, so that's perfect. So we can go Time Snap, Seeds of Strength, make sure we pitch an Earth card for it, which is also another kind of difficult constraint, although the 2 Might tokens is still fairly decent, again, with the Thrives. And then since we have the 1 resource left over, we can put the other Strong Yield into play. And then, of course, just set up with our Crumble to Eternity. So, there we go. That's everything on board that we need. Arsenal to Thrive. And because we do have the Amulets of Earth, we do need to satisfy its Earth Fuse requirements. So, for that sake, we have Fulminate, which is still a decent buff, and overall it does work out to more damage, right? So, a little bit of math, right? So the Fulminate would be equivalent to 5 resources for Thrive, right? Because we're paying 2 to play Fulminate, and then it's taking up a blue pitchable slot. So that'd be 5 by 4, or 20 damage, versus getting the Fulminate proc plus 3, right? And then the Amulets of Earth each getting plus 3 as well. So overall, I think I've done my math correctly, and playing the Fulminate into the Amulets of Earth is more damage. And then the same can be said for Plume of Evergrowth, right? Since by playing it, getting 1 extra Thrive, we're losing out on 3 resources to buff Firebreather with. So it all comes down to how many static buffs you have going on, whether or not Thrive is better in that case. But again, by going all outs, it should be better. So we can now go Fulminates. Oh, actually no, my bad. First off, we can go the 3 Energy Potions, so we actually have the resource for Fulminate. Fulminate, since we need the fuse, we can reveal a Thrive, right? So that satisfies the Amulet of Earth. We can then play our Thrives. Done, done, done. And then we will Plume of Evergrowth it back. Play a 4th Thrive. And then we can crack our Crackerjacks, our 3 Strength Potions. So each of these are getting plus 4 now, thanks to the extra Thrive. Our 3 Amulets of Earth. And then use Harn Cross Trap actually play the Firebreather, still having one extra resource to buff it just a little bit further, right? So a 75 with Dominate, that's definitely an OTK, but the setup, of course, we're adding a lot more cards to it, so it definitely decreases its consistency overall, right? Makes it a bit too complex for my liking, so we need to sort of find the middle ground, because despite, being the Jarl, being Frost, being able to just stall and fatigue your opponent down, we do want it a bit more streamlined, I think. So now it becomes a question of how much can we strip away, right? So we still have Crumble to Eternity, but no other setup aside from the energy potions, but they're a bit more longer lasting, right? Any auras we put into play means that our combo has to directly follow that turn. So already that is a decent change, because what it means is we'd have Crumble to Eternity in our hand with the combo pieces, right? Play Crumble to Eternity, draw, hopefully get a blue, and then go into the combo turn, right? So that's already significantly better setup rather than trying to, pitch stack over the span of 2 turns, trying to utilize, 8 to 10 cards or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's a decent change. And then Potion of Strength, I've swapped back to the Jarl's Hammer and the new Legendary Arms, right? Because I still think the objective is obviously destroy all your opponent's equipment and then just stall them out, right, until you can get to this point. But we still have Tunic, although I do have the resource for Tunic, that's fine. It doesn't, how much damage does it add? It adds 4 damage, right? So we can work that out. But it's still crack the energy potions, right? Crack the Potions of Strength. Beautiful. And then, of course, play the Thrive. So there's also the question of how many Thrives can we get away with, right? So imagine one of these was another blue, for instance, or, maybe nothing entirely, and we don't actually have to Arsenal card. How much damage would that be? And the nice thing is, of course, thanks to math, we can do all that, right? So we will play all 3 Thrives, right? Play our Firebreather, and we're at 18 already. So if we were to cut out one of the Thrives, right, that means the Firebreather would go down to 15, because we'd lose 3 from the Potions of Strength. We then still have 7 to pitch, so it'd be 7 by 3. Firebreather's innate +1, plus the 2 Thrives. So it'd be 21 onto 15, so we'd only be doing 36, which I guess isn't quite enough, right? But then if you were to throw in another Blue Pitchfork instead of the Thrive, that would work out, right? Because that'd be an extra 9 damage, so that'd take you over the 40 mark. So this is fairly decent by itself, right? With only the 3 Thrives. This pushes it to over 40, which is kind of what we really want, right? 46 with Dominate. Again, sort of guesstimating that we've stripped away our opponent's equipment. I think that's fairly decent for an OTK. I mean, you could still, again, take auras for setup. If we had the extra resource from Spring Tunic as well, that'd be an extra 4 damage, so this would be 50 overall, right? In fact, we can just simulate that nice and easy. Give it a plus. Done. And there we go, right? So if we actually had Tunic still up, that'd be 50 damage with Dominate off of 3 Thrives. But yeah, cutting out as many cards as possible is definitely probably the objective, right? If we cut out the pitchable and just had Firebreather and the 3 Thrives, that would be -3 overall, which would be -12 damage. That would put us under 40. I mean, as long as you chip away your opponent, they still count your blessings, which makes it a bit more difficult. But yeah, I think that's still a solid OTK, right? And it, over the course of the match, you don't go full hardline into fatigue and degen. You can just get them down, and then you have a huge, wide range, right, for your opponent's HP to KO them. Because yeah, Dominate. Crumble to Eternity is just, this shouldn't have been attack, right? But they wanted to make it valid for the weapon. Anyway, let's take a look at the deck, shall we? Okay, so here's what I'm working with so far with our fire-breathing turtle deck. Yeah, beautiful, right? So yeah, mainly taking Still, Frost, and Stall, and then the combo pieces, which in this case would be trying to set up 3 energy potions and the Potions of Strength over the course of the game, and then just fighting a Crumble to Eternity, the Thrives, and the Firebreather to then OTK your opponent, right? I think that's a solid win condition. So we aren't using Rampart of the Ram's Head because we are taking a much more defensive line. But I think the goal would still be to just run Mangle, Arm Disruption, and some other juicy cards. So I'd probably swap back to Stalagmite. And then we also have the option of swapping Heart of Ice, right? Although Tunic with a lot of our defense reactions or just defensive cards is probably a little bit better to smooth over that curve. Although a lot of them are generally statted quite well for the Guardian curve, right? And then we do also have cards like Forged for War, which is probably worth mentioning because you could use it in conjunction with Crackerjacks, for instance, or Plume of Evergrowth to make them blockable cards, right? They don't have Blade Break, they don't have Temper, so there's no destruction effect from that. Although, this does open you up to Jarl Disruption, because there's a few equipment destruction cards, which I don't think I have here, that just target 0, right? So they would be available for destruction. But again, we don't need Crackerjacks, we don't need Plume for the extra Thrive. Again, it doesn't add that much. It's like 2 extra damage when done optimally, and optimally is with a whole bunch of setup. Now, another good choice as well, instead of Firebreather, is probably going to be Exude Confidence, or realistically, you can take any attack, right? It's whether or not you want resources, which again, is generally easier to come across, right, to then pitch into Firebreather, or you want to go for more setup, because the more cards you have on board, again, 3 potions of strength, Crackerjacks, that's already 4 by 3, right, so that's an extra 12 damage onto whatever we're doing. So Exude Confidence is definitely a valid choice because of its whole effect. When it's not defended by a card equal or greater, the defending hero can't play or activate instants or defense reactions, which is fairly huge, especially with Count Your Blessings, right? It is a effect that you will probably always get off in this sense, because your Exude Confidence will just have a ridiculous amount of attack, right? I don't think, in all honesty, though, the Amulet of Earth and the Fulminate, that's probably making it a little bit too complex. Another honorable mention, right? Lead with Heart. So the next Guardian or Warrior attack this turn gets +3, so that works well with the weapon, right? And then you get a Vigor token, and that Vigor token will generate your resource to then pour into Firebreather. So not only are you getting a buff on the turn you're quote-unquote setting up, right? But then you also get a resource to buff Firebreather with the Thrives. So that is also a decent idea, right? So you set that up, you swing with your weapon, instead of going for a strong yield. Although I think I like Emerging Avalanche most of all. Even maybe chucking the Tunic into the setup step, right? Where we go 2 Emerging Avalanches thanks to Tunic, and then Crumble to Eternity. And that way you have the 2+3s plus Thrives for the Firebreather. And then you also have Fuse, because you have Crumble to Eternity. So 2 Frostbite plus the Frostbite from the Jarl's effect. So 3 Frostbite going into that turn. Because, yeah, you definitely still have to, obviously, save the pieces. So cutting out the arsenal, definitely worthwhile to consider, right? Getting rid of 1 Thrive and just relying on a pitchable to draw when you play the Crumble to Eternity. But overall, I think that is a fairly decent win con. In fact, you know what comes to mind is Riddlerman, right? Check out his channel. He had a very degen Bravo shield deck, right? So I might ask him for that backbone to tie into this. But yeah, you'd still definitely want to run Frost. And I'll put this link in the description. It's the first time that I've really sort of built a deck around the combo, rather than just, obviously, working with the combo, hence why I don't usually post deck lists. But yeah, Fire-Breathing Jarl. Gonna be fun. It's my Melody combo that's easier to pull off, right? Yeah, when every resource counts for an extra 4 damage, that's quite hefty. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.